Hailing from the great cold state of Alaska, I am the Frozen Gamer, and tonight I want to talk to you guys about my crazy predictions that probably won't happen, stuff coming to Nintendo Switch to be shown at E3 this year. So, I'm just going to be very clear. None of these I expect to actually happen. Not a single one of them. And I'll give you the reasons why I don't expect them to happen, but there's still things that would be amazing to see, and I'm just going to put them out there. Alright. So first of all, we're going to start off with Persona 4 Golden Plus. Yes, that's right. Persona 4 Golden Plus. So Atlus has been talking about doing different, more entries in Persona 4 franchise. And yes, they've done a lot of their spin-offs between their arena games and their dancing games, which the latter of which I have zero interest in, and the former I'm terrible at. But there is a possibility that we could see another version of Persona 4. And if somehow they could get out of Sony's grasp with these Persona games, which I have no idea what their contract terms are, but if somehow they could get out of this contract, they could release Persona 4 on the Switch. And would be really amazing. I heard someone suggest this on Twitter, I saw someone suggest this on Twitter, and it's crazy, but it would be amazing, is if they put Persona 4 into the Persona 5 engine. Because Persona 4 Golden is one of my favorite games of all time, easily. One of my favorite JRPGs. And seeing that in a modern engine would be amazing. So great. Such a great game. And I would take it no matter what. Even if basically it was just like a... If all it was the Vita version of the game with a little bit of added whatever to it, I would be totally fine with that. That would be all. That's all I really want. But I would be super stoked if they did something more with that. So it's a crazy prediction. It's probably not going to happen, but it would still be amazing. The second one that I also think is crazy, but would still be amazing, is Persona 5 Crimson. Now, the reason why I say Crimson rather than Golden or whatever else is because, Persona 4, the reason why they tagged on Golden is because of the fact that they kind of had that yellow theme throughout, that yellow color palette of sorts. The yellow tint to everything, really. But Persona 5, red was a real thematic color all throughout the whole thing. And if they were to do a new version of Persona 5, something that they could do as a portable game, and do, that they could, basically it would be the definitive version of Persona 5, and they could get out of their contract with Sony on that, or work something out. I mean, this could be an amazing Switch game, because Persona 5, it's a crime that game is not portable in any way, shape, or form. Of course, I would even be okay with them just doing a downgraded Persona 5 on the Vita. I would be fine with that. I just want the game portable. That's all I really care about. But putting it on the Switch, that would just be absolutely perfect, because they wouldn't really have to downgrade the visuals at all. I mean, the game also runs on PS3, the original Persona 5. And so, put Persona 5 on the Switch as well. Guaranteed to sell better than it did on the other versions. Guaranteed. And, the game only sold about 2 million total between PS3 and PS4 worldwide. And that's good, but it's not great. And if you look at the sales of Persona 4 versus Persona 4 Golden way outsold Persona 4. And Persona 5, they make a portable version, it's going to sell better. There's no question about it. Japan's going to eat it up, America's going to eat it up, Europe is going to eat it up. Heck, there are probably people in Europe who would not buy a Switch otherwise, that if this game came to Switch, they would buy a Switch just for this game. And I wouldn't blame them, because it's an amazing game and it deserves to be portable. So, probably not going to happen. Highly unlikely it's going to happen. Unless there's something we don't know about. It seems like Persona is tied to Sony permanently. And we'll just have to wait and see if anything changes with that. The next game is Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age. Now, any of you who have followed any of the stuff I've said about Final Fantasy over the years know that even though it's an unpopular opinion, Final Fantasy XII was one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. And I realize it's very different from the other ones, but it's such a great game. And the Zodiac Age fixed a lot of the problems with the original Final Fantasy XII, at least in my opinion. And, you know, it's the one time where I would be willing to buy the game a second time, or a third time, really, because I bought the original on PS2, got the collector's edition of that, and then I got the PS4 version last year, which I just got the Steelbook version. But this would be my third time buying Final Fantasy XII, my second time buying Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age, and I would be so happy to buy it on Switch, and I would even start from scratch just to play it on there, because it's an amazing game, and it would be a perfect portable game. Heck, I wanted them to do this on Vita. I wanted it so bad, because Final Fantasy X worked so great on Vita. It was a great, great choice for them to put that on Vita, and they didn't do it with 12, and it was such a missed opportunity. So disappointing. And if they could bring this game over to the Switch, that would be incredible. Now, why do I say that this is an unrealistic thing? The main reason I say it's unrealistic is because of the fact that it was one of the Sony exclusive Final Fantasy games. And so far, with Final Fantasy VII up through 12, every one of those, the only places they've ever been, I should say, well, they have never come to any console other than a PlayStation console. They've come to PC, and they've come to smartphones in some cases, with 7, at least 7. I don't know if 8 or 9 came to smartphones. I know 7 did, but I think 7's probably the only one that actually came to smartphones. But 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all on PC. Every single one of them. And it's because Sony doesn't care. You know, they don't seem to have that exclusivity deal all across the board just on consoles. And whether or not the Zodiac Age is something that has a temporary thing going for it, because of the fact that it's not, because Square Enix isn't exclusively dealing with Sony anymore, that's hard to say. But I think that just based on what we've seen so far, what pattern we've seen so far, that most likely, because of the fact that this was originally a PlayStation exclusive, and there's been no indication that it's going to leave that status, that it's highly unlikely we'll see it on Switch. I will be happy to be proven wrong, though. Especially because, as much as I've wanted to buy the Zodiac Age on PC after I found out it was coming out, and would be able to be played in 60 frames per second, I've held off simply because I've put so much time into the PS4 version, and I'm so close to getting that Platinum Trophy that I'm just like, no, I'm not going to start over again on PC at this point. But if it came to Switch, that would get me to start over again. I would do it for that. That's the one thing that would convince me. So the next thing I think is unrealistic. It's not impossible, but it's unrealistic, is the Witcher collection. Now, hear me out on this. Witcher 1 and 2. Witcher 1 was a PC exclusive. That one, I think, would be tricky to make work on a console, but it's not impossible. They might have to more do something with the Joy-Cons to make it work, or just find some way to work that out. And I think realistically, the only way they're going to do it is if they were going to port the first 2 games to PS4 and Xbox One as well. But it's something they could do. Witcher 3, that one is the one part of this equation that really makes the whole thing unlikely, because I just can't imagine that they would port the first 2 games, but not the third one, unless they were just doing the first 2 games to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, and then PS3 wouldn't have to be touched because it's already on PS4 and Xbox One, and it highly, most likely can't run on Switch. But yeah, this is a kind of a crazy prediction, and it's probably not going to happen, but it would be really cool if it did. I personally wouldn't do it. I have the first 2 Witcher games on PC. They're not for me, for my own personal reasons. But I think it would be great for people who love those games. Kenny Newville, you're one of the guys I'm talking to about this, because I know you want this. The next thing I think is a crazy prediction, and probably won't happen, is Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Now, I've talked about this game before. I know it's not real popular, but I love this game. And I would love to see it on Switch. I would gladly buy it again, just to play it portably. And I don't mind starting over from scratch, because I think this game would be perfect for the Switch. But there's 2 big reasons why it probably won't happen. Number 1, because EA. I mean, we have to be realistic. Looking at EA, just the way they are with putting anything on Nintendo, like, I have a feeling that this year the best we're going to get from them on Switch is just another FIFA. Maybe they'll actually put more effort into it this time and give a real full-fledged game, but they were pretty pleased with the sales for it last year, so at the very least we'll get that. I don't think Mirror's Edge is going to happen. The other thing is just really graphical power. Now, they did get the previous Mirror's Edge running on 360 and PS3. In fact, that was where it was located primarily, other than PC. And I don't think that, from what I can remember, really the graphical differences between the first game and the second game are very small. So it's not necessarily that it couldn't, but it's a little bit harder, especially because they're using Frostbite, and at least so far they seemed hesitant to bring the Frostbite engine to Switch, because obviously it would require a whole different kind of optimization because it's a different platform. So the only thing that I could say would be in favor of this happening to Switch, as far as EA is concerned, is the fact that they like to put games that most people don't care about. And then they can say, when nobody buys it, they can say that it failed. I mean, that, it's like, well, we put our games on here and nobody bought them. But, of course, I think that, realistically, if they did, even if that was the last game they ever brought to Switch, I would be happy with it, because most of EA stuff I just don't care about. Especially considering the fact that Mass Effect Andromeda, from everything I've heard, was awful and fairly broken. Which is too bad, because the first 3 games were great. And kind of going along those lines, this is another one for you, Kenny Newville. And that is putting the Mass Effect trilogy on Switch. Another one where, it's 100% dependent on EA. This time, though, the only reason why I say it probably won't happen, well, I guess there really are 2 reasons, but the number 1 reason is because of EA. It's just EA. Expecting them to actually bring something like this over, I don't believe they will. But if it was up to Nintendo, that's the other problem, the other half of the problem, because I do think that Nintendo would probably be less interested in bringing this over simply because of the fact that it's 3 games from the last generation, and Nintendo's been wary about bringing over old games. But, of course, at the same time, they've also been bringing a lot more ports this year than they did last year. So, it could happen, but still, EA is going to be the biggest problem in this situation. And I don't think there's much chance of them bringing this over. So, it's another unrealistic prediction. Now, the next 2 are not quite the most unrealistic predictions, but still pretty unlikely. So first of all, The Division 2. We know that there's a new Division game coming. It's supposed to be coming before the end of this next fiscal year. So by the end of March 2019, or actually, I can't remember if that's actually Ubisoft's fiscal year or not, because it's different for different companies. But while in favor of this, we do know that Switch will run Frostbite, or not Frostbite, sorry, will run Snowdrop. We know for a fact that that's the case. So, it could theoretically come. But it's also a matter of, will they have time to get this over, and are they willing to? I do think that Ubisoft and Nintendo have a good enough relationship to where it could happen, but it's something where I also think that even with that relationship, it's just a matter of whether or not they're willing, and that's something that I think makes it pretty unlikely. And similarly, I'm going to go with Destiny 2. I think I actually might have covered this one in my third-party predictions, saying that I thought that it was possible. I do think that there's a possibility that they could make it work. I mean, it would have to run at 30 frames per second, which isn't really a problem, because, I mean, the other consoles, it runs at 30 frames per second, and the first game was 30 frames per second. That's all it was. And it was still great. But bringing Destiny 2 over, it would be great. It's just a matter of whether or not they would actually do it. And, you know, before I had made the mistake in one of my previous videos saying that the reason they didn't want to bring it over was because the Switch was underpowered, and that wasn't what they said. What they said was that they didn't have any plans to bring it over because of the online situation. And that's understandable. Not necessarily because of the fact that it's not doable, but because of the fact that obviously this is a game you can only play online. You have to be online to play this game. And I don't think that that's necessarily a valid reason to not bring it over, but I'm saying that it's at least a decent reason. Because, you know, at least with the games like Splatoon 2 as an example, that one has single-player content that you can play without being connected to the internet. And that one has some, I mean, you have the ability to play local co-op in certain things, or that kind of thing. So, I don't know. Destiny 2 is one of those things where, obviously, if they were going to bring it over, it would be Destiny 2 with all of the new stuff, most likely coming out at the same time as the new expansion in the fall. But I think that there are enough hurdles to where it's probably not going to happen. And I think that the simple fact that the game's big enough to where it wouldn't be able to fit on a base Switch, you would have to have a memory card for it. That would also be a definite hurdle, because I don't think they're gonna, even if they brought it over and used, you know, a 16 gig card, no matter how much they compress it, it's still gonna take up quite a bit of space. So it's hard to say what exactly will happen, but all these predictions are pretty unrealistic. They're pretty crazy predictions, but it's still fun to do sometimes, just because you throw stuff out there, see if anything sticks. I figured not a single one of these is going to stick, but if even one of them did, it would be amazing. My vote, if I had to just pick one, it would be a new Persona. It would be Persona 5 as a portable version, because that's the one thing above all else that needs to be a portable game, more than any other game. What about you guys? What are some crazy predictions that you have? I mean, maybe not talking about like Sony first-party titles or Microsoft first-party titles, but some crazy predictions that, no matter how unrealistic they are still things you would love to see. Sound off in the comments below, and until next time, this has been the Frozen Gamer, and I'll talk to you later.
I never miss.